Okay, today we're going to be reading an autobiography, or sorry, a biography, and then later on this week we're going to read an autobiography about a woman by the name of Wilma Mankiller. And we'll read a little bit about her name. We'll read about who she was. And again, like we did with the Colin Powell story, you're going to look at a biography about this person, what other people wrote about her, and then an autobiography, what she wrote about herself. We're going to annotate this one. I don't know if I've talked about annotating in a lot of detail, but we're going to be marking up this story. We're going to be writing all over the page. That's why you have a printed copy in front of you. Because good readers, as they're reading through a text, they are marking it up if they can. When I take college classes, I always have to buy the book. But one thing I like about doing that is when I buy the book, then I can write whatever I want in the book. I can write in the margins, I can draw pictures, I can do whatever it is to help me understand what it is I'm reading. So that's what we're going to do with this. We're going to do close readings of it, which means that we are going to read it and then jot some notes down to help us understand it better. Okay, I will walk you through the steps. Make sure you watch this video carefully and listen, because there will be points where I will have you mark your page in specific ways that let me know that you watched the entire video and didn't just skip through to the questions. So hopefully you're following on. Hopefully my discussing it with you will help you better understand the text. So let's get started. To start off with, we're going to look at the top where it says background. Wilma Mankiller, 1945 to 2010, was born in Oklahoma, the sixth of 11 children. She grew up in a home without electricity, indoor plumbing, or a telephone. In the 1950s, the Mankiller family was relocated by the Bureau of Indian Affairs and moved to San Francisco. Mankiller was the first woman to be elected principal chief of the Cherokee Nation. As chief, she worked to improve the nation's healthcare, government, and education system. She continued to be an active presence in the Cherokee Nation after she left office and was particularly dedicated to working for women's rights. So think about that. She grew up, first off, she had a huge family, 11 people, 11 kids in the family, but she grew up with no electricity, no indoor plumbing, which means no bathroom inside, probably had an outhouse out back, and no telephone. Okay, so she probably had a tough time growing up a little bit, which probably had an impact on some of the decisions she makes. So to begin, this is Community Hero, Chief Wilma Mankiller by Susanna Abbey. So remember, this is a biography. Remember, biography means someone else wrote it about her. Autobiography, which auto is going to be one of the prefixes we're going to get to later on this week. Auto means self, so autobiography would be a biography about herself. We'll read the autobiography later on this week. So as you read, if you look at number 1, as you read lines 1 through 31 of Community Hero, begin to collect and cite text evidence. We're going to be underlining facts about Wilma Mankiller's childhood, and then we're going to circle the role the San Francisco Indian Center played in Mankiller's life. Now that second one, that circling one, you actually won't do that on page 87. That won't come until later on page 88. So we're going to focus in on the underlined facts about Wilma Mankiller's childhood. Okay? And while I'm reading, I want you to underline at least 2 facts about Wilma Mankiller's childhood. Remember, a fact. Facts are events or situations that occurred so they could be supported by the historical record. You can prove it. A fact is something that you can prove. An opinion would be someone's feelings about something. Okay, so a fact would be it was 52 degrees today. An opinion is that is the perfect temperature. It's very, very comfortable. Okay, fact, you can go and look. And there you could look at weather service, you could look at a lot of different documents to prove, yes, it was 52 degrees today. Or an opinion, you can't prove that it's the perfect temperature. Some people think it's a little chilly. Personally, I think it's a little chilly today. But other people think it's the perfect temperature. They would much rather have it be this than any other temperature. All right, now to begin reading. Remember, you're underlining at least 2 facts about her childhood. Wilma Mankiller came from a large family that spent many years on the family farm in Oklahoma. They were, of course, poor, but not desperately so. As far back as I can remember, there were always books around our house, she recalls in her autobiography, Mankiller, A Chief and Her People. This love of reading came from the traditional Cherokee passion for telling and listening to stories, but it also came from my parents, particularly my father. A love for books and reading was one of the best gifts he ever gave his children. Right now, I want you to pause the video and you need to underline at least 2 facts about Wilma Mankiller's childhood. Okay, one example of a fact you could underline is she came from a large family that spent many years on the family farm in Oklahoma. Okay, that's a fact. You can look up that she lived on a farm in Oklahoma. Okay? Looking at page 88 now. Unfortunately, a poor local economy made the Mankiller family an easy target for the Bureau of Indian Affairs relocation program of the 1950s. Government agents were entrusted with the job of moving rural Cherokees to cities, effectively dispersing them and allowing others to buy their traditional oil-rich lands. In 1959, the family moved to San Francisco, where Wilma's father could get a job and where Wilma began her junior high school years. This was not a happy time for her. She missed the farm and she hated the school where white kids teased her about being Native American and about her name. Mankiller decided to leave her parents and go to live with her maternal grandmother, Pearl Sitton, on a family ranch inland from San Francisco. The years she spent there restored her confidence, and after returning to the Bay Area, she got increasingly involved with the world of the San Francisco Indian Center. There was something at the center for everyone. It was a safe place to go, even if we only wanted to hang out. The center provided entertainment, social and cultural activities for youth, as well as a place for adults to hold powwows and discuss matters of importance with the other BIA relocatees. Here, Mankiller became politicized, at the same time reinforcing her identity as a Cherokee and her attachments to the Cherokee people, their history, and traditions. So if you look up closer to the top, so her family was forced to move based on the government. They were forced to move into the city, and the government took their land and sold it for oil. Now, if it were me, I'd be pretty irritated, to say the least, if someone came in and said, hey, sorry guys, you got to move. We'll help you find some place to live in the city, but you're going to have to move. I know this is where you live, but sorry, we're going to sell this land for oil, and you're just going to have to deal with it. Good luck. So right now, if you look down at the bottom, in the margin, see where it says close read notes on the left-hand side of the page? I want you to, that's the margin, and I want you to write down 3 important events in Mankiller's life. From this section right here, write down 3 important things that happened in her life. You could write about her moving. You could write about her living with her maternal grandmother, which means it's her mom's mom. You could write about any of those events, but I want you to write down 3 main events from her life. Okay? Pause the video here so you could write those 3 main events. Now I want you to, after you do that, in the box where it says number 2, I want you to write down, why does the author include information about Mankiller's childhood? Support your answer with explicit textual evidence. What that means is, give me an example from the story. Why do you think these events are important to include in her story? What does it help tell us about her? Okay, remember to give at least one specific example of what that shows. Pause the video here while you answer that question. The last thing I want you to do is circle the role the San Francisco Indian Center played in Mankiller's life. Circle the role the San Francisco Indian Center played in Mankiller's life. Okay, you'll see a description of the center in the bottom of the page, that last paragraph. Circle the sentence there that describes what role it played in her life. Pause the video here while you circle that sentence. Okay. Here's the first thing that I want you to mark on your page. Down by where it says number 88, page number 88, draw a smiley face. Draw a smiley face by page 88. Congratulations, you already got 1 point just for following along with the video with that smiley face. That's worth 1 whole point. Good job. We're ready to move on to the next page. Page 89. When a group of Native Americans occupied Alcatraz Island in November 1969 in protest of U.S. government policies, which had for hundreds of years deprived them of their lands, Mankiller participated in her first major political action. Now, some of you may have heard of Alcatraz Island. It used to be a prison, but they occupied it, which means they went on it and refused to leave. Because they were angry at the U.S. government for taking their land. And I can understand where they'd be a little irritated. All right. It's changed me forever, she wrote. It was on Alcatraz where at long last some Native Americans, including me, truly began to regain our balance. In the years that followed the occupation, Mankiller became more active in developing the cultural resources of the Native American community. She helped build a school and an Indian adult education center. She directed the Native American Youth Center in East Oakland, coordinated field trips to the tribal functions, hosting music concerts, and giving kids a place to do their homework or just connect with each other. The youth center also gave her the opportunity to pull together Native American adults from around Oakland as volunteers, thus strengthening their ties. Mankiller says she learned on the job, joking, "My enthusiasm seemed to make up for my lack of skills." But she was in truth a natural leader. And it looks like it, looking at all of the things she helped to organize to bring those people together. She returned to Oakland in the 1970s, where she worked at the Urban Indian Resource Center and volunteered in the community. In 1981, she founded and then became director of the Cherokee Community Development Department, where she orchestrated a community-based renovation of the water system and was instrumental in lifting an entire town, Bell, Oklahoma, out of squalor and despair. In 1983, she ran for deputy chief of the Cherokee Nation. Now, if you don't know, squalor means like a filthy or a wretched condition. All right, I've got a couple of tasks for you to accomplish. The list is actually on page 88, down at the bottom, number 3. So what you need to do on this page, page 89, the first thing I want you to do is circle Mankiller's first political involvement. Circle what was the first thing she came politically involved in. It's towards the top of the page. Pause the video now while you circle Mankiller's first political involvement. All right, now in the margin, in this case it's going to be the right side of the page. I want you to explain why the Native American Youth Center was important to Mankiller's development as a leader. Okay, on the right side where it says close read notes, I want you to write down why was the Native American Youth Center important to her development as a leader. Circle an example to support your answer. Okay, so you're in the margin, you're writing why was that important? Then you need to also circle an example to support your answer of why it was important. Pause the video here while you do that. The last thing I want you to do is underline problems Mankiller encountered during her campaign. Now notice where I said it's on page 90. You actually won't see that until page 90. So I just wanted you to keep that in mind while we turn to the next page. But the last thing I want you to do is see the word renovation. I want you to write down the definition of renovation. Renovation means upgrade or restoration. Upgrade or restoration. Pause the video while you write that down. All right, page 90. Before we move on, I want you to write down the following two definitions. Vindicate means to justify. Vindicate means to justify. And obligate means to require. Obligate means to require. You may have heard the term obligated, like you feel like you have to do something. Like if you're obligated to go to something, that means you are required to go to it. Maybe you're obligated to go to a family function because your parents are making you. All right. So pause the video while you write down those two definitions. Okay. The campaign was not an easy one. There had never been a woman leader of a Native American tribe. She had many ideas to present and debate, but encountered discouraging opposition from men who refused to talk about anything but the fact that she was a woman. Her campaign days were troubled by death threats, and her tires were slashed. She sought the advice of friends for ways to approach the constant insults, finally settling on a philosophy summed up by the epithet, "Don't ever argue with a fool because someone walking by and observing you can't tell which one is the fool." I'm going to read that again. Don't ever argue with a fool because someone walking by and observing you can't tell which one is the fool. In the end, Mankiller had her day. She was elected as the first woman deputy chief, and over time, her wise, strong leadership vindicated her supporters and proved her detractors wrong. Detractors are people who talk against her. So she went through a lot trying to be the chief. She was criticized. She was attacked. She was everything. Everyone was telling her that she shouldn't do this, and yet she still pushed on. But my favorite part is that epithet. That reminds me of like trying to argue with a little kid. You can argue with a little kid. This happens sometimes with my kids when I try to have an argument with them, and you realize after a while that sometimes you just have to walk away because you look really stupid when you say, "Well, yes, it is," and they say, "No, it isn't." "Yes, it is." "No, it isn't." "Yes, it is." "No, it isn't." Okay, you get nowhere, and you both look stupid for having this argument over and over, and you're just saying the same things. And she had this philosophy too that, you know what, I could argue with you all day. It's not going to get us anywhere. So you know what, I'm not even going to waste my time trying to argue with people who are going to talk against me and tell me that I'm wrong or tell me that I can't do this. Sometimes I feel like we need to have that philosophy in our own lives that, you know what, I could waste my time with jokers who are going to tell me that I'm going to fail. Or I could keep doing what I believe is right. And you know what? Look at what happened. She was elected chief. All right, let's read the last paragraph. In 1985, when Chief Ross Swimmer left for Washington, D.C., Mankiller was obligated to step into his position, becoming the first woman to serve as principal chief of the Cherokee Nation. Now, this was one part where I was confused. Okay? So I want to clear it up. So she was elected deputy chief, which means she's like so if you have the sheriff of a police department, the deputy is the person right below him. It's like she was like vice chief. But when Chief Ross Swimmer left for Washington, D.C., then she became the chief while he was gone. Although poor health forced her to retire from that position in 1995, Wilma Mankiller continues to be a political, cultural, and spiritual leader in her community and throughout the United States. In 1990, Oklahoma State University honored her with the Henry G. Bennett Distinguished Service Award, and in 1998, President Clinton awarded her the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. All right. Now, remember that question from the previous pages, I want you to, right now, underline problems Mankiller encountered during her campaign. Okay? I want you to underline problems Mankiller encountered during her campaign. Pause the video while you do that. All right. The next thing I want you to do is I want you to go through and reread lines 58 through 69. Reread lines 58 through 69. That's the top of page 90, that first full paragraph. Reread that paragraph and write down at the bottom of the page, I want you to write down, what are some possible reasons that men may have opposed having a woman as a chief? Why do you think they felt that way? Okay. Also write down what experiences qualified Mankiller for the job. Why do you think she would be a good fit for the job? Look at previous pages. Make sure you have specific evidence. Cite specific evidence from the text about why you think she would be good at this job. I can think of some examples from page 89 that would work really well with this. Okay, so why do you think men opposed having her as a chief? And then what experiences do you think made it so that, you know what, she'd be really good at this job? All right, the last thing I want you to do is I want you to put a star. Put a star next to the page 90. Okay, next to the number 90, put a star. Okay, again, you get another point just for putting a star next to page 90. All right. Go back through, make sure you've answered every question on these pages. We are going to read more about her life through her autobiography so you get more of her perspective on her own life later on. But congratulations on finishing this story. We'll read about her next time.